On that bright morning, Squidward was seen casually riding his bicycle, as today was his annual holiday filled with high-tech delight. He planned to pamper himself by dining at a luxurious restaurant located at 617 Kraken Avenue. He also intended to visit a place called Sol de Soup Spoon. Before long, he arrived at the address, but instead, the place turned out to be quite terrifying because it was a venue for wrestlers. As he tried to enter, he was blocked by a guard. Squidward explained that he had made a reservation there for a relaxing meal. The guard did let him in, but by throwing him through the door. It turned out the address wasn't 617, but 917. The number 6 had been read upside down. Once inside, Squidward was shocked by the violent scenery. The whole place was full of brawls and brutal fights. It made him wonder if this was really the kind of place he had reserved. Soon after, one of the guards approached him and asked what meal he had ordered. Despite the intimidating presence of many muscular creatures, Squidward stuck with his choice of food. They immediately brought out an extremely wild dish, starting with a bizarre drink. Squidward reluctantly drank it. At first, it tasted good, which surprised everyone. But suddenly, Squidward's head began to react strangely and flew all over the place. He stopped moving when his head collided with a human fist, knocking him unconscious. When he finally came to, Squidward was furious and asked them what kind of place this was. The guard, Reg, explained that this was a place for wrestlers. Due to the earlier head injury, Squidward had lost his memory. He no longer knew who he was, or even his own name. Reg quickly took advantage of this and decided to throw him into the fighting arena, or he would hang Squidward on a wall with the other tough-looking men. To get started, Reg gave him a new name, Crazy Legs. Immediately, the crowd welcomed him by throwing random objects at his body, leaving him battered. Reg then officially brought Squidward into his gang, but first he had to pass a test. Reg lent him his favorite motorcycle. After putting on the gang's hat, Squidward revved the engine and sped forward, only to crash right into the gang's headquarters. Unable to control the bike, Squidward fell hard. Reg walked up and declared that Squidward had passed the test to join the gang. It turned out, crashing into their HQ and injuring several people was the perfect initiation ritual. Squidward was then given a pair of big, stylish boots that 2 members had taken from someone else. The gang then rode through Bikini Bottom in full swagger, looking for someone to fight. Reg had a specific target for Squidward to beat up. At first, Squidward approached the man and asked to take a picture with him. But his constant movements made him lose balance, accidentally flinging the man's hat into a trash can. Reg saw this and praised Squidward for knocking the man out with just one move. Squidward was rewarded with clothes taken from the same man whose shoes had been stolen earlier. Since he had passed yet another test, the gang took him on another ride, stopping at Mr. Krab's restaurant. Inside, the gang began causing mischief, disturbing customers who were trying to eat. This was meant to teach Squidward how to behave like a true gang member. Squidward then joined in by stealing a customer's French fries. The customer screamed in horror and ran away after Squidward dipped the fries in sauce. Squidward proudly celebrated his first bad boy act. Soon after, SpongeBob showed up and greeted Squidward. But since Squidward had amnesia, he didn't recognize him. SpongeBob tried to explain that they were co-workers and neighbors, but Squidward didn't believe him. Instead, he turned SpongeBob into little balls and blew him away. Hearing the ruckus, Mr. Krab stormed out, shocked to see the gang causing chaos in his restaurant. He scolded Squidward and the gang, but he met the same fate as SpongeBob. Mr. Krabs immediately fired Squidward for misbehaving, while SpongeBob looked on in admiration, thinking Squidward now looked very macho. As night fell, Squidward and his gang arrived at his own home. Squidward then invited everyone to barge into his house. The gang eagerly broke in and started destroying everything inside. One by one, Squidward's belongings were smashed and ruined. Meanwhile, Squidward stood in a room full of his priceless paintings. Reg reminded him that the paintings were of himself, but because of the memory loss, Squidward didn't believe it. He began scribbling all over them. Worse, Squidward ordered the gang to destroy all the paintings and everything else in the room. Moments later, a police alarm was heard. But when they looked outside, it turned out to be just SpongeBob mimicking a siren. He claimed he was doing a night patrol and noticed that the house looked broken into by a biker gang. And he was right. The gang had trashed Squidward's house, but Squidward scolded SpongeBob for meddling. In his business, unaware that he himself had destroyed it. Angrily, Squidward threw SpongeBob out. SpongeBob, heartbroken that Squidward had forgotten him, tried to jog his memory by playing the clarinet. But Squidward responded by placing a bomb inside it. The explosion destroyed his house. Squidward passed out. Eventually, he regained consciousness. Slowly, he remembered who he was. He questioned why he was wearing such outdated clothes. He had even forgotten about the biker gang and was shocked to see his house and belongings in ruins. He blamed the biker gang, but Reg explained that he was the one who caused the destruction. Still, Squidward refused to believe them, even when Reg insisted it was his own fault. Furious, Squidward kicked the gang out of his house and slammed the door shut, causing the upstairs bathtub to fall on his head. He lost his memory again. Once more, Squidward returned to being a biker, and now the new gang leader. And the movie.
Hi guys, one day it was seen that Sponge Tom was getting ready, putting on his work uniform. There, he immediately said goodbye to his snail named Barry. Not long after, he arrived at the Krusty Krab restaurant. He walked in enthusiastically, and the customers warmly greeted his arrival, especially Octward. Then, Sponge Tom went into the kitchen to make tacos. Before that, he prepared all his ingredients. The difference this time was that the dish was more practical and quicker than Krabby Patty. Not long after working for quite some time, his boss, Mr. Claus, came in and allowed Sponge Tom to go home early because tomorrow was his day off. Of course, hearing that made Sponge Tom very happy because he could cook food for his pet. They both laughed together. Somewhere else, it showed SpongeBob sleeping on the bus because he was so tired after a full day of work. Since he didn't wake up, SpongeBob ended up passing his house without realizing it, as the bus kept going until it entered the tidal zone.
That's where SpongeBob got off, unaware that he was now in another place, not in Bikini Bottom. He approached a melon-shaped house and unlocked the door. Meanwhile, inside the melon house, Sponge Tom was feeding his snail using several food bowls, unlike Gary. At that moment, Sponge Tom heard a knock on the door and opened it, but no one was there. That's because SpongeBob had entered through the window. Still half asleep, SpongeBob thought it was his own house. He even told Berry to wear her shell. Meanwhile, Sponge Tom didn't know that someone else was inside his house. SpongeBob thought the bus was his vacation bus. Then he left the house. SpongeBob himself had already fallen asleep soundly in Sponge Tom's bed. Eventually, morning arrived, and SpongeBob woke up fully rested. When he looked at the clock, he was shocked because he had overslept and was late for work. He bumped into the door because the doorknob wasn't in its usual spot. While brushing his teeth, he was confused because the mirror wasn't in its normal place. Even when he fell, the way he fell felt unfamiliar. He felt that the house was different from his usual one. Even when he ate, the food tasted different than what he normally ate. Eventually, when he arrived at work at Krusty Krab, he greeted the customers by the names he knew in Bikini Bottom, even though they were different people. For the first time, SpongeBob met the friendly version of Squidward. SpongeBob was confused about the entrance. Everyone who saw him was confused by his behavior. When he was in the kitchen, SpongeBob was shocked that all the ingredients and grills were different. Even the patty buns were so thin that SpongeBob had trouble making them, but even so, he continued cooking using his skills. And when the food was served, Krusty Krab appeared wearing an apron. Moreover, Krusty Krab thought SpongeBob was his employee who was on vacation. Since SpongeBob is kind of scatterbrained, he thought the one in front of him was Mr. Krabs, causing a misunderstanding. Squidward then came in and told Krusty Krab that they had made the wrong order. They should have made tacos, not something else. If they couldn't make tacos, the customers would go to Yum Bucket. In the end, SpongeBob was truly confused because the two sea creatures in front of him were very different. Squidward then introduced himself as a friendly and kind octopus. Krusty Krab told SpongeBob that his employees were given a day off every week to celebrate Children's Holiday. Hearing that made SpongeBob feel even more unfamiliar, since Mr. Krabs rarely gave him days off. Seeing all the strangeness around him, he immediately ran out. That made Krusty Krab and Squidward feel confused about him, as they still hadn't realized that the person in front of them wasn't Sponge Tom. Outside, SpongeBob saw his customers lining up at the Yum Bucket. Not believing his eyes and thinking something was wrong with his vision, he went to an eye doctor. A short while later, SpongeBob was wearing glasses, even though his vision was still blurry. He planned to tell Sandy and Patrick about the strange things happening. He happened to see them and immediately approached them. But SpongeBob didn't realize that he was causing chaos, boats crashing everywhere, even explosions. SpongeBob ate Patrick's straw thinking it was food. He drank facial wash thinking it was soda. He told them everything he had experienced. He felt that this city was very strange. Luckily, he still had Patrick and Sandy, who seemed normal. But after he took off his glasses, SpongeBob realized that those weren't his two friends. They were just two old strangers. SpongeBob screamed and ran, thinking the city had gone crazy. Everything and everyone was different. He felt that the world was truly not okay. He rushed to his yellow-painted parents' house. When he rang the bell, it turned out to be a trap bell. Eventually, SpongeBob met Sponge Tom, who looked exactly like him. Not long after, Sponge Tom's parents came. That made SpongeBob extremely confused. He thought the people here were imitating his parents. SpongeBob was really overwhelmed and screamed hysterically in fear. While running, he accidentally hit a sign that read "Tankini Top," knocking him unconscious. Then, Sponge Tom's family came to help and decided to send SpongeBob back to Bikini Bottom using a boat. Soon after, SpongeBob was seen back in Bikini Bottom, where all his friends had gathered around him. When he woke up, he was shocked and happy to see his friends again. He told them about his nightmare, how he met strange people who looked like them. But the truth was, it wasn't a dream. SpongeBob really had the experience.